The Roland Garros cameras are meant to track the ball, but occasionally they catch something much more interesting, and nobody was prepared for what they caught of Alex Eala. The weight of history amplifies every grunt, every look, and every tear at the French Open, a tennis temple. However, the cameras captured something that the commentators, the umpire, and the WTA are still attempting to explain as the 20-year-old Filipina entered Philippe Chatrier's court for her second-round match. A moment so unexpected that the stadium held its breath, and the internet hasn't stopped talking since, but it wasn't a winner or an argument. 15,000 people watched Philippe Chatrier's court in Paris, France on May 26, 2026, in an event that nobody in the arena anticipated. Let me set the scenario for you. The French Open was in full swing, the second round was in progress, and the 17th seed, Philippe Chatrier, had gathered for what looked to be an easy victory. It was anticipated that Eva Jovic, the 18-year-old American who had swept the tennis world, would dispatch her former doubles partner with clinical efficiency. However, Alex Eala had not read the screenplay. With Eala's left-handed spins upsetting Jovic's rhythm, the Filipino flags waving in unison, and Laban Alex's cries reverberating off the old stadium walls, the first set had been an attrition struggle. The stadium was rocked by Eala's decisive 7-5 victory. It was considerably more difficult in the second set. Throughout the first 6 games, neither player gave up a single inch. It was oppressively tense. Everyone in the crowd stood up. Desperately, the flags waved. Then, during the 7th game, something occurred that was captured by the cameras, although at first nobody, not even the commentators, understood. A seemingly impossible drop shot was pursued by Eala. She stretched and flipped the ball back over the net with her racket barely making contact. The ball touched down little inside the baseline. Eala remained motionless as the mob exploded. She stayed on the clay, her shoulders trembling and her face concealed beneath her hands. The medical staff ran across the court. The supervisor of the competition was called in. With controlled concern on their features, her coaches hurried to the baseline. This was nothing new to the Foro Italico. Rome, the ankle ailment that had put her clay season in jeopardy. It had happened once again now that she was in Paris, on the largest stage of her career. The Philippine flag ceased to fly, the stadium was silent, and the chants vanished. Then an unforeseen event occurred. Eala forced herself to stand. She put her ankle to the test. She inhaled deeply. She glanced at the stands where Risa, her mother, was praying by putting her hands together. She turned to see Cristiano Ronaldo, who was leaning forward in the royal box with an unreadable expression. She made her way back to the baseline. Instead of celebrating, the crowd stood up in solidarity. Eala's French Open campaign would be defined by the moment the cameras caught her standing at the baseline, her face pale, her jaw set, and refusing to give up. It was the fight, not the tennis. Eala persevered through the agony to retain her serve and forced Jovic to deuce after deuce as the contest went on. However, the cameras had already discovered something else that would cause the tennis community to forget about the scoreboard. Allow me to take you inside the moment that the internet would not let go of even if the broadcasters initially missed it. The camera operators watched the spectators for reactions while the trainers attended to Eala's ankle during the medical timeout. They discovered Risa Eala, her lips moving in silent prayer as her hands were joined. They discovered Eala's coaches, worried expressions on their faces. Cristiano Ronaldo was leaning forward and staring at the court. Then they discovered something surprising. No one recognized the young woman sitting next to Eala's mother in the front row of the players' box. She was just there. She wasn't a journalist or a star. She was also in tears. Her tears weren't the controlled, courteous ones of a casual fan. They were the kind of tears that come from someone who has committed far more than just ticket money. They were unfiltered and real. With quivering shoulders and white knuckles, she held a Philippine flag to her chest. For a brief period, the camera focused on her, long enough for the internet to take note. Social media was inundated with rumors in a matter of minutes. Who was she? She was crying, but why? How did she relate to Alex Eala? When the solution was found, it was easier than anyone had anticipated. Grace was her name. She was a Manila-born nurse who had spent 11 years working in Paris. She had saved for months, skipped meals, and worked double shifts in order to purchase a ticket to Roland Garros, yet she had never taken a holiday or gone to a sporting event. Grace would later tell a reporter, "I wanted to see her with my own eyes. I wanted to yell her name and raise our flag. For a brief period, I wanted to feel at home. Grace believed it was over when Eala collapsed onto the clay. Before she could stop herself, she started crying because she felt that her pilgrimage had been in vain. But Grace's tears of terror turned to tears of joy when Eala got up, stepped back to the baseline, and refused to give up. "That's our fighter, our Alex." Her remarks were captured on tape, the world heard them, and the Eala effect took on a new significance that went beyond flags and chants to include the people who waved them, the sacrifices they made, and the love that got a 20-year-old through her suffering. Ayala's face was pale, but her eyes were clear as she stood at the baseline with a throbbing ankle. The 20-year-old Filipina had to decide whether to defend her body or pursue her goal when the match was deadlocked at 3-3 in the second set. Allow me to take you inside the scene that turned out to be the match's pivotal moment and the one that the cameras will always record. After Jovic served and Eala came back, a rally started with 10, 12, and 14 shots. With each stroke, the crowd's cries rose as they counted each exchange. After being motionless throughout the medical break, the Philippine flag started to wave once more, initially tentatively and then increasingly confidently. With her ankle gripped and her concentration unwavering, Eala moved, slid into a backhand, recovered, ran to the net, and withdrew to the baseline. The stadium exploded as Jovic made a mistake on the 15th shot, sending her forehand sailing long. 15 Love Eala pumped her fist at the spectators, the flags, Grace, the nurse who had saved for months to be here, and her mother, who had never given up, rather than at Jovic or the umpire. The next point took 22 shots, which was even longer. Eala opened up the court, shifted Jovic side to side, and bided her time until she had a chance to attack. Eala intervened and tore a short ball from the American's racket. A downward forehand. On the baseline, the ball landed flush. Jovic could only observe. 30, my love. Everyone in the crowd stood up. Likelihood of lob on the stadium, which had been holding its breath, became a boiling pot of commotion as Alex became louder and more demanding. Her mother put her hands together in prayer, Eala glanced at her box, and her coaches nodded. The nurse, Grace, was crying once more, but her tears were different this time. The 8-shot rally was brief, nasty, and decisive after. Jovic served and Eala came back. Jovic's backhand found the net, while Ayala's forehand found the corner. 3 break points, 40 love. The chants were thunderous, the stadium was trembling, and the flags were flying. Eala turned to face Cristiano Ronaldo, who was leaning forward in the royal box with his hands clenched and an enigmatic expression. She glanced at the stands, where thousands of Filipinos had come from all over the world to see this event. She glanced at her ankle, which remained wrapped and hurting, a constant reminder of how close she had been to giving up. She inhaled deeply. Jovic was on duty. The service box was where the ball ended up. Jovic was forced to back off as Eala made a deep comeback. The American's subsequent attempt was a feeble lob that hovered in midair. Eala followed it. She positioned herself beneath it. She made a swing. The ball dipped just in time as it screamed over the net, striking the baseline with a flush landing. Jovic lunged, hit it with a racket, but was only able to divert it into the net. Take a break. The stadium blew apart. Eala just went to her chair, sat down, and turned to face her mother without dropping to her knees or raising her voice. Alex Eala was not crying, but Risa, Grace, and thousands more fans were. She was grinning. The second set was lost. The stadium held its breath, the flags waved, the cheers resounded, and Alex Eala stood on the red clay court while Jovic battled back and forced a tiebreak. Philippe Chatrier, ready for the most significant moments of her life. Long after the scoreboard was forgotten, people would remember what transpired in the tiebreak, so allow me to take you inside the last moments of that historic game. 5-5 was the score, and the tiebreak Jovic had 2 match points saved. Younger but no less resolute, the American refused to give up. Jovic managed to prolong the match each time Eala was on the verge of winning. The crowd was on its feet, and the atmosphere was oppressive. Jovic's return floated long, 6-5, match point once more, as Eala's serve screamed down the center line. The stadium stood up, the flags waved in unison, and Laban Alex's chants intensified. Eala went to the baseline and gave the ball a single bounce. 3 times, twice. Her mother Risa was wiping tears from her eyes as she glanced at the stands. She turned to see Cristiano Ronaldo leaning forward with his hands clasped in the royal box. She turned to face Grace, the Manila nurse, who was holding onto her Philippine flag as if it were a lifeline. She threw the ball into the sky over Paris. The serve landed close but wide rather than an ace. Jovic made a feeble return that ended up in the center of the court. Eala intervened, slamming a forehand into the gap. Jovic didn't move since she didn't have to. The ball has vanished. Set, match, game. Eala Alex. The stadium blew apart. Eala let go of her racket and covered her face with both fists as her shoulder trembled. She finally let go of the tears she had been holding back due to the injury fear, the anguish, the weight of 40,000 supporters, and the gaze of the world. The Philippine flags fluttered in every section as her mother and her coaches raced onto the court, and Laban Alex's unwavering screams reverberated throughout Roland Garros. Cristiano Ronaldo sprang up and cheered from the front row. Every shot of the victory, which meant more than just the scoreboard, was captured by the cameras. The event would be replayed millions of times. Not because of the prize money or the ranking points, but rather because of what it stood for. Not only had Alex Eala won a tennis match, but she had demonstrated that the Eala impact was about fighting, not giving up, and inspiring 40,000 people to think that everything was possible. Eala's phone was ringing with messages from all over the world as she sat in her hotel room later that evening with an ice pack wrapped around her ankle. Globally, the hashtag Eala fights became popular. Over 80 million people had seen the video of her getting to her feet following the injury scare. After knocking on the door, her mother went inside. "Anak, you succeeded. Mama, we succeeded. Together, we completed it." The French Open would go on, with more games and battles to be fought, but the moment that would be remembered from the 2026 competition was not the trophy ceremony, the final, or the crowning of a champion. Rather, it was the moment Alex Eala dropped to the clay and got back up. The remaining question is easier to answer than it first appears. Will the next generation of Filipino athletes remember Alex Eala's triumphs or the battle that made her unstoppable when they take the stage, motivated by the flags they saw in Paris, the chants they heard from the fans, and the woman who refused to give up? For more stories that go beyond the score, leave a comment below and subscribe to Court Legacy. After a tough 75-765 victory over number 17 seed Eva Jovic, Alex Eala moved to the French Open's third round. The crowd became silent after Isla's ankle scare during the second set necessitated a medical stoppage. However, the 20-year-old Filipina persisted and won the match in a tiebreak by going back to the baseline. A Filipina nurse named Grace, who had saved for months to attend the game, was caught on tape sobbing in the stands in an unexpected moment. When Eala got to her feet, her tears of terror turned to tears of pride. More than 80 million people have watched the video. Later, Grace remarked, "That's our fighter, that's our Alex." After winning, Eala will face a higher-ranked opponent in the third round. It is anticipated that she will move up to number 32. The iconic image of the French Open is the moment she emerged from the clay. Alex Eala defeated number 17 seed Eva Jovic 75-765 to progress to the French Open third round. The arena became silent after Eala's ankle worry during the second set necessitated a medical break. However, the 20-year-old Filipina persisted and won the match in a tiebreak by going back to the baseline. A Filipina nurse named Grace, who had saved for months to attend the game, was caught on camera sobbing in the stands. When Eala got to her feet, her tears of terror turned to tears of pride. More than 80 million people have watched the video. Later, Grace remarked, "That's our fighter, that's our Alex." After winning, Eala will face a higher-ranked opponent in the third round. It is anticipated that she will move up to number 32. The iconic image of the French Open is the moment she emerged from the clay.